400,000 people with disabilities and their families will be welcoming the announcement this morning by the Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, that they're going to be funding the National Disability Insurance Scheme through a 0.5% levy on the wages of Australians. I think what this means is that people can actually look at their pay packets and they can be sure that they are actually investing in a long-term scheme which will mean that they or a child gets the support that they need if they have a disability. We're also pleased that the government has made the strategic decision not to link the changes to the National Disability Insurance Scheme to changes to the Disability Support Pension. I want to be clear, these are two very different issues. The reason that they're different is that many people with disabilities, some 800,000 people around Australia, are on the Disability Support Pension because they lack precisely the kinds of supports that a National Disability Insurance Scheme would fund. Nonetheless, we need more work to create additional jobs and opportunities for people with disabilities so that we can lift people out of the poverty line. We've got around 600,000 people on the poverty line around Australia. What the National Disability Insurance Scheme announcement means for families is that people will no longer have to face not being able to get out of bed in the morning because the personal care support worker doesn't turn up, not being able to get the equipment and therapy that we need, not being able to get the support that families need, having people in their 80s or 90s looking after their adult children until they die, having people living lives of desperation, horror and lives without hope. This is a really appropriate announcement. A levy is the right mechanism to do this. We are pleased to see the bipartisan support for the scheme. Tony Abbott yesterday wouldn't rule out a levy and wouldn't say how the scheme would be funded. The reality is that we now need to hear from both sides of politics how they propose to fund the scheme. Going forward, we actually need to hear from the opposition as well. They are one seat away from being the Government of Australia. There is a decision that Australians will have to make in September. The reality is that we've got bipartisan support for the scheme. We need to hear from both sides of politics, and we deserve to hear from both sides of politics how they propose to fund the scheme. If there is money in general revenue to fund this, then we haven't seen it. Everybody is saying that it's been cut to the bone and that we are tight. So if there's those savings to be made, they need to be outlined. I've heard Peter Costello, and we've heard from the Australian Council of Commerce and Industry talking about needing to shelve this scheme for better days. Well, the fact is, we had the better days. We had the brighter days with the enormous surpluses under the Howard government. If we didn't do it then, how are we ever going to do it now? So Australians with disabilities are sick of waiting for this. We believe it needs to be done now. What a levy does is it shields this from the budget cycle and the electoral cycle. It locks it in, it makes it perpetual, it actually means that there'll be a secure underpinning of the scheme. As I understand the Treasurer's announcement this morning, what they're talking about is actually having a rolling investment over time that builds the sovereign wealth going into the scheme. The states will also need to cough up to make that happen, and that's the right thing because this is a shared responsibility across levels of government.